Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Tuesday night in the spotlight. Tonight, I have joining me Vered Segal, and Vered is a good friend of mine. And after a childhood rife with domestic violence and dysfunction, Vered found peace in religion and her marriage. However, when her husband became severely mentally ill as of the result of turning to drugs, she took control of her life and divorced him. After his subsequent suicide, she fell into a self-sabotage and rage and descended into the lowest point of her life. A spiritual awakening helped her see for the first time how life can be an upward spiral of hope and joy. Now, after years of self-reflection, spiritual growth, and professional training, Vered is a life coach and quantum touch energy healer. Vered helps reset her clients in all areas of their life, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. She is dedicated to helping others break destructive patterns and create peace in their life. So welcome, Vered, and thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me. So fun.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the coaching that you do?
Sure. I was just going to say that bio. It's like, oh, that's my PhD and that's my MD, and these are all my qualifications, right? Sure. So I think first, just that's the intro into it, because the coaching that I do it's a mixture of coaching and energy work. So what ends up happening is I'm really, because of my own healing work that I have done, I basically am able to guide other people through their own process. So people will come to me in different stages of being stuck in their own life. And I think it's also helpful maybe to put like a little background onto all of that, like that my bio, it really is exactly that, like my life kind of in a very constricted thing, a few sentences. But I guess what I just want to say is, going through all of those things, like I knew one day, basically after my ex-husband had taken his own life, I basically got to the point where I was just saying that I basically just said a prayer. I said, look, God, after whatever it's going to take to get me well, so that way I could be a healing force in this world, like, please let me do that. Like, please let me be that healing force in the world. Because there was, up until that point, so much pain. I mean, you read a whole bunch of pain. That's just a bunch of pain, you know? And what you really read is a whole bunch of generational patterns that have been passed down from well, you know this as you do your generational healing work, right? So everybody has their own, and some, overlap. That's why there's addiction in certain in families, or there's a lot of just different types of abuse. Sometimes there's manipulation, sometimes there's codependency, and they make a whole, but the world has been through so much chaos, and it has been through so much turmoil in terms of the human condition, like just of us being human.
Yeah.
That this I really believe is the generation of where the healing is taking place, because this is finally the generation where we're able to get help and get therapy and get, all these different types of therapies and energy work that we could do to basically break the patterns of the generational curses. And that's actually a good way to describe what I do. So basically what I really help my clients, because my clients are basically anybody that's in amount of pain. It's because of what's going on in their life and how they're feeling about themselves. And it's based on how were they brought up? What were they seeing? Like, there's certain ways of interacting with their parents or with inside of their own culture of what was expected of them. And so as you grow up, you start taking on things that are maybe not so much in alignment with your soul, or very much not in alignment with your soul. Okay. So for example, it was always something that was a horrific thing for me, that I grew up the opposite of loving my dad, because of all of the violence that was in my home. But that hate, see, I said the word hate, right? But that amount of hate ended up festering in me, and I'm the one who experienced that. And then what ended up happening, so that just happened to be, that was a pattern of this rage that got passed into my pattern. So now I grow up and I have this pattern, and I deny the pattern, because this is the last thing that I ever want to do or I ever want to be. Yeah. And by denying it, what ends up happening is just the emotions just get trapped physically into the body. And I was crazy. Like my relationships were a disaster, friendships, or everything it was just a mess. And my thinking was distorted. And it was because of this kind of a pattern that was introduced to me. Now I know that there was a point where I knew that something was wrong. So that's the healthy part. That's the higher consciousness. That's a higher self saying something's wrong, something's wrong. But there's also a part of you that has to acclimate to your situation and your environment when you're being raised by people, these human people who have their own patterns that were passed down from their parents or whoever it was that was taking care of them. Okay. So what has happened is through my own healing work and really fully embracing and taking full responsibility of my life. And the reason why I have to say this, and I think it's so important, is because I became that which I hated. So when I went through that situation with my former spouse and I had 2 little children, I wasn't even ready to get married in the first place, really, because of the emotional stuff. And religion masked that because I found something and it was spiritual and it definitely took me on a better path than I was on before. But things that need to come out will come out. And I was just, and so what ends up happening is that you end up being paired with the person, and sometimes it's the most uncomfortable thing, and that's also sometimes what people are dealing with, is a spouse that kind of brings out the worst, or like some things that are hidden that need to really be healed.
Oh, and isn't that true with all relationships?
All relationships, every single one. Yeah. And so that was a situation, probably the most traumatic one, because there was mental illness involved, and it was just so scary. And I had 2 children. And it was probably the most traumatic, even though I went through a lot, but it was very traumatic. And so, but what ended up happening with that is the patterns of the abuse and who I was. Now I had to own that, because even after we got divorced, I saw how I was acting, and I was an abusive person. And that was awful to me. And throughout my life, I wanted to take my life because I didn't see a way out of when I was a child. But thank God I didn't. And there was like little angels in my head that told me not to, right? But then when I was really faced with myself and the rage that I had, and I was taking it out on these little children, it was probably the most horrifying. I traumatized myself even by acting like that. So traumatize them, traumatize myself. And I think this is something important to talk about, because I think there's a lot of shame about that, and I have worked with women who, they're screaming at a 2-year-old. It's like, who's the one that's supposed to have the temper tantrum? 2-year-old, age appropriate, 30-year-old, 20-year-old, 40-year-old and up, not age appropriate. So that means that parent is dealing with some part of their childhood, that there's some rage in there, there's some anger, there's something that in there that needs to be healed, so that way you could actually become a better parent and become the love that you are really looking for your own kids. And so anyway, this was something that I could not shake, was the rage, until finally, after 10 years of doing my own healing work, I was introduced to someone who basically just put out there, meditate, just sit in silence and don't die for an hour at a time, and then fall in love with everything. So I actually had to start the process of healing, and the process of healing is love. Like, that's where it had to start. And it was like love and hate. It was like rage and love. So once you start loving the part of you that you hate, automatically healing starts to happen. So my mind started to get healed. And then as I'm healing, going through this, people are coming to me, like they're being attracted to me, even if it's in the subway, like, oh, and then we talk and it's like, oh, are you a therapist? And I'm like, no, but the thing is, so it was a natural course of action for me to become that healing force and to become a coach. And subsequently, I also got trained, and I'm a certified quantum touch energy healer, which brought everything to a new level. And so just to answer your question, now that it's 10 minutes later, so that's really what I help my clients with. Like, that's what I do with my coaching, is I identify the patterns, because it's it's becomes very obvious, where people are very blind to their own patterns, and they also think that it's them. They think there's something wrong with them, or they think there's something wrong with their spouse, or they think there's something wrong with their children, or they think there's something wrong with their friend or their boss. I mean, in anything, or their country, whatever. Like, this stuff gets big, and obviously we're living at a times where there's so much noise on the outside that it's actually forcing you to go inside. You know, I had a woman contact me today, and she's like, she's in so much pain. And then she's like, oh, it's because of the isolation. And I said to her, actually, you could also look at that as a gift, because what that's also giving you, and that's what this is the opportunity where this world is shifting into a higher level of consciousness, whether we like it or not. I mean, I didn't like being shifted into that, but, you know, the healing is very it could be painful, but it's also part of the process, right? Like, pain is the cornerstone of growth. So I was like, this is also the opportunity for you to be grateful, because if you were not in isolation, you would be distracted, and the pain of the situation that you're in happens to be a marriage, and, you know, there's certain issues there, right? But the pain that you're in would not really be fully realized there, and you wouldn't be in the position to go and get yourself the help that you need. And it was just like really beautiful, because she's just completely understood that. And so there's a level where people, this is our time, you know, this is like your time to heal. And so anyway, so the answer to your question is that that's what I do. I identify, I work with the person to see where their own blocks are. And to move them.
I absolutely love your energy and your passion and your enthusiasm for what it is that you do. You know, because talking about things like trauma, talking about things like these generational curses and the patterns and everything else, it's not necessarily something that a lot of people actually want to step into. You know, it's, for a lot of people, there's so much shame that comes along with a lot of these kind of trauma topics, and even what our own personal experiences are, and speaking about things like the rage that we all have. But a lot of people don't want to chat about it. You know, a lot of people don't want to admit to struggles in their life or anything else, or even looking at themselves as being the mirror when it comes to a relationship that is a struggle. They don't want to look at, what is my part in this? What is my pattern that's coming up in this? And what is it that I need to look at and heal within myself? Because it's so much easier to put the blame on everything else, whether it's the country, whether it's the isolation, whether it's a book that you read, a TV show that you're watching, or a conversation that you're having with someone that's triggering some sort of response inside of you.
Yeah, that reminds me of a Facebook post that was like, a little piece of grass was growing, and then the rain dropped on it, and the grass is like, you're triggering me. And I was like, how perfect is that? It's like the rain is there to allow it to grow, you know, and then the grass is like, no, stop, you're triggering me, you know, but really, like, it won't be able to grow into who it really is, into this beautiful blades of grass or the plants, whatever it was meant to grow, if it wasn't that, you know. And the trigger point is where the healing needs to happen. Like, it's exactly a roadmap, you know. I think, I don't know, I don't know the author, but they said basically that, I think there's even a book entitled, you know, what's in the way is the way, you know, whatever you're having resistance to, whatever is triggering you, like, that's exactly where it needs the healing. And that's also where I help my clients, because it's like, it's hard to go at it alone and without any guidance and just see it. Although, of course, you know, sitting in meditation and all that stuff it's always so helpful. But sometimes you need just like a bit of a cushion to understand that even where you are right now is like okay with all of you, with all the imperfections, with, you know. And that's like, it's really important, I think, especially like even in a lot of trauma gets released like in our sessions, because also, so this is kind of where like the energy work comes in, which I get really excited about, which I'll tell you about. And so but I don't know, remember what I was saying. Anyway, so I was just saying, what ends up happening is that it becomes like a really safe space, because as you said, there's so much shame, and you don't just talk about this stuff, like nobody. And that's the problem, you know. I don't know if it's a problem, but I'm just saying, you know, there's, well, I guess in our own human existence, it's really, we're also creating what we see. it's kind of interesting because I was going to go into like the judgments. We're so afraid of being ourselves because of all the harsh judgment, because it's like, well, if you're doing something and you're acting crazy, like you don't want to admit that. And then you feel open, and that open and vulnerable feeling, because you weren't really allowed to feel like that as a kid, and really to like enjoy and like to grow and to feel vulnerable and to play. It was always shut down. You can't feel like this, see, I'm streaming because I'm just like, I just like went on a tangent, but in my mind, but I just want to say that tangent was that the more space that you have for yourself and the more healing that you have for yourself, the more healing that you are going to be, the more space you are going to be a force of healing for other people. Because when you start clearing out what is triggering you, all of a sudden you're not as triggered. Like, it's actually possible to watch the same thing that you watched 10 years ago and got triggered and angry by, and watch it today and it not triggering you.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So
absolutely. Yeah. Because I can look at patterns throughout my own life and see things that used to trigger me a lot.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, interesting that that's showing up again. And there's not an emotional response. There's other things that will trigger, and I'll go, oh, I'm being triggered right now. And I need to go and sit with this, and I need to understand this and hold the space for this and love this, and not fix it, but to just be there with it as it's coming up.
Yeah, exactly. And a few things I was thinking, like that's the thing about you being able to like to sit with everything, and also to be willing to be wrong while you're sitting with yourself, because the ego just wants to protect you, but ego also is for like, is it an acronym, whatever, edging God out.
Yeah, that's an acronym.
Right? Thank you.
Yeah.
And blah blah blah. And also earth guidance only, because it's like the ego.
I like that one. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, because your ego is really just working on what has been presented in your human experience. And the brain can only create what it's already known, which is why the patterns keep continuing until somebody decides that's it. It's enough. It's enough. I'm willing to go through the pain of breaking the pattern so that way I can experience truly who I am. Isn't that what you really want? Isn't that what everybody really wants, is just love and acceptance? And you think that it needs to come from the outside. And that's where you get tripped up, is by really thinking that your love and acceptance comes from other people. And it's so the opposite, because it's like, once you start loving and respecting yourself, then that's what ends up shifting. Then other people's consciousness shift and they treat you with love and respect. You have to own it. And that's what I love helping people do, is to walk in and to step into their own God-given powers, like the truth of who they really, really are. Because these patterns are not allowing you to be. It's like, it's a self-created prison that you need the key, and that's why sometimes it's like you can't unlock yourself out of it. So it's helpful to do that. And I've gotten myself so much, as much as I say, like, like I help my clients and all this stuff. Yeah, that's to the extent I could say that, because I've gotten myself so much help, and people, I've always had angels in skin guiding me through my own process. And it's really so you can get all the information, so that way you can heal yourself in the most deep ways, so you could really step into who you are as a fully integrated human spirit and soul. And where you're the one who gives yourself permission to do that. But you're always looking for, before doing that, you're always looking for your parent to do that for you. And your parent is coming in form of spouse, in form of kid, in form of job, in form of country, in form of whatever it is. And it's just an amazing thing to look at, how that pattern of always wanting the outside to confirm, is actually, it needs to be flipped in some way, so that way you could start gaining back your own emotional power. I gave away my power for years, but once you start taking that back, it feels so good.
You're absolutely right. It really, really, truly does. To be able to own your power, to step into it, and to be able to share it so openly with people as well, because it's no longer a give and take. It just is something that simply is,
Yeah. When you're saying, when you're sharing with other people your story and you're giving.
Yeah. When you're in your power, It's
Yeah.
not like give and take, and I need to give this and I need to get this back and I need to give whatever. Like, it's not about that anymore. It's just simply you're showing up and you're just who you are. A tree is
Yeah.
just a tree.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the way that you're showing up. Yeah. And so awesome. And so this is the healing aspect of it, is that before the healing, right? The way that dad, talks to me, well, I text him and then he doesn't he doesn't say how wonderful I am, or he doesn't approve, or he just doesn't answer. It's just an example of something that came up, right? So then it's like and then you get angry, right? But then what ends up happening once you start going through a healing process, start owning that, once you own the shadows, like the dark side of yourself, you can start allowing other people, even your parents, to just be those human beings. And those human beings did not have the level of love for themselves. How could they have possibly have given that to you? So what ends up happening is, as you shift, you become a person that can show up in your relationships the way you want to show up, just because that's how you show up, without expecting that. And look what that does. Excuse me, without expecting how they're supposed to be acting on the other side. Well, oh, if he only did this, well, it's not so hard. They could just return a phone call. It's like, do you feel in your gut, like how even those thoughts, they just,
Yeah, it's very constricting.
very
Yeah.
constricting. Yeah. So that's when you start to paint yourself into a box, and you start painting yourself into a prison, because you're expecting everybody else to act a certain way because that's reasonable to you. And it's funny. It's like ironic and funny because they've never acted that way in the past, ever. Like, you've never had evidence of them coming and giving you a tremendous amount of love and accolade. But every single time they do it, you expect something different to happen. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, right? But unless you see it, you don't see it. And you don't know what you don't know until you know.
Absolutely.
It's actually pretty profound, because you can't see it until you see it. So then it just becomes you're a person that's full of love. And, a lot of times empathic people in their family structure have been paired with other people that have narcissistic character traits. Yeah. It's amazing how that happens, and it's a beautiful combination. It's really a painful combination before getting the healing. But man, when you're really going in there and you're looking at yourself and starting to own your power, especially like as an empathic person that is really needing to kind of step into their own gifts, and really the most important thing for somebody is for an empathic person, because what they do is you end up taking on everybody's energy. So if, like, let's say there is a parent, a lot of ladies, they have a mother that's a narcissistic character trait, or men that have a mother or father, or whatever it is. It's just a pair in that way. And they're always taking on that level of anger and that level of contempt and disgust, because those people, they're not really that happy, So what ends up happening is then the empath just really takes it on. So then they have guilt about feeling good. They have, it's like a trauma bond, like all of this stuff. So then the pattern ends up manifesting itself in an empath. An empath is like this beautiful kind of shining light, but they start to identify as like narcissistic. It's like a very interesting thing. I'm not even trying to get so psychological. I'm just pulling on. I'm just saying, like, it's just kind of an interesting thing, and maybe somebody needed to hear that, because I don't really say that out loud that much. But it really is an interesting combination between those two, and really where the healing can really take place is when you're really willing to do something uncomfortable, which is start owning your power just a little bit more, and start giving yourself the love that maybe you didn't get. And you're now becoming the source of love for yourself. And something that has been kind of keystone is that, up until a certain age, your parents maybe theoretically have the obligation, to nurture you and to love you and to give you all of that emotional sustenance that really a child needs and deserves. Okay. But the fact is, most of the time that it's not done. Some parents do really well in one area and not well in another. And some, it's failure altogether, or whatever it is. But at a certain age, when you become an adult, I think I'm from Canada. I say adult. Anyway, so
Canadian viewers, it's all good.
Awesome, I love you. So what ends up happening is that I don't remember what I was saying. Do you remember?
You were talking about when we get to the point of being an adult.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So what ends up happening is that when you become an adult, really, it's not your parents' responsibility anymore. And that it's kind of hard to hear in a way. And, are you willing to let your parent off the hook and allow them to reject you and allow them to not be responsible for your emotional health anymore, so that you can start growing into who you really truly are?
And for myself, it's about becoming the parent that I needed when I was a child for myself. Now I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second, because Annette's asking, what is something that we can do when we slip from loving ourselves back to the old pattern of reacting?
Yeah, so this is a beautiful question. Great question, Annette. And so what ends up happening is the brain is so tricky. It'll be like, oh, look, you're doing so well. And then look, you just slipped into a pattern. And then because it's like a default and your brain has a negative bias, and what it's going to want to do is capture that. And then if you kind of are not okay with it, or if you're resisting the fact that you kind of went into an old pattern again, which is so normal, right? Like, it's so normal. It's part of the process. And the truth is, it's always a learning experience, because it's always painful. The result of going into a learning experience of repeating a pattern, the natural consequence of that is that you experience pain. But then what you end up doing is you end up beating yourself up because you went through that pattern. And so what I want to offer is, no, just be like, oh, look what just happened. I just went into that pattern. I love that. And that's okay. Something to be able to help you to be okay with that part of yourself. Because guess what? It's just part of your makeup. And if you could love that part of yourself, even that makes mistakes, or that kind of, you want to say go back, but it's just basically almost like you shifted a gear. It's like, instead of being in a higher vibration, you just slipped, or you shifted into something, and that kind of needed to happen for your growth. So I would look at it as an opportunity for your growth, and to love yourself through something like that is actually painful, but that's where the healing is. Because when you love yourself through going through one of the patterns that you've been experiencing, on the other side of that is joy and love. And then what ends up happening is that is a healing in and of itself. And once that is fully healed, you're less likely, because there's no reason for it to come up. The only reason why things come up as a trigger is for your healing. So as you go through that and heal it, it's like once you can go through the pain and get through it and to the other side and love yourself through it and forgive yourself through it. And, sometimes there's actions you need to take. If I make a mistake, you can make a correction, you could own it, but then also understand that it's part of the process. And really what it is that you've noticed that you've disconnected a little bit from your own source of who you are. So let's go take that back and come back to the source of who you are, who was with you even when you went out of the pattern, when you went out into doing something that was uncomfortable. Your source was with you and loving you while you were doing that, and while you were experiencing that pain and kind of lost yourself. Okay. So you get to be with your source. That's a beautiful thing about sitting in silence and being, and just being okay with who you are in that moment. It's like, yeah. And that's actually an experience of love, because your higher self is just loving you all the time. So being able to be in congruence with that love will take you through that. And that's real healing. So what sometimes will happen is that I just want to say, one more word. I'm such a liar. It's not one word. Anyway, so it's because what happens is, in the past, is that you go through patterns and these experiences that are painful in your life, and then it has to get shut down somehow, or you're beating yourself up, which just keeps you really in the cycle of the pattern. And you want to resist it because it's uncomfortable feeling the uncomfortable emotions. So what I just want to offer is that the more willing you are to sit with yourself in the uncomfortable emotions, to that extent will you be able to experience the joy in your life. So I've had to sit there and experience, yes, I failed. Awesome. Yes, that feeling, I feel it. I feel it. And you get to just really feel it. And then bring some compassion into yourself. Yeah. Yeah, I had to experience that emotion. I have some compassion for myself. You know, you have some compassion for yourself. So bring in some compassion and some love for yourself, and own it. This is not airy fairy stuff. This is really work. I hope I answered that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and I know we talked about this quite a bit, but just for anybody that is on here, in the process of sitting, okay, and you've got this painful stuff that's coming up, it's, to me, it's not about fixing it. It's about being with it and just allowing it to be there. So what is your process for dealing with the painful stuff as it comes up? Is it just simply, okay, I love you, I'm going to have compassion for you? Do you allow yourself to feel it to its full extent? What do you kind of do there?
Yeah, okay, it's a good question. So it, it really depends on the situation.
Fair
But
enough.
when it's something, because that's the brilliant thing about getting tools and using a lot of tools to just help you, because but either way, there's sometimes, by the way, there's a prayer. You know what it is? It's help me. Because sometimes I'm just
so many times.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, help me and thank you. Best prayers ever. Okay. So, and then sometimes something will come to me, what I can do. But an example of something, if I was, and I've had this example where I would just get really angry, right? At maybe, let's say, my daughter. So, and so anytime that I'm in anger, I know that I'm wrong, but 100%, but that's so hard. Like anytime there's anger, it's like, you're never going to be coming from a place that's going to be helpful. It's not coming from your alignment. Okay. It's coming from something that's in so much pain. And also underneath anger is a lot of hurt. So that's what it masks. Anyway, so at that point, I literally felt like I was dying, but I said, thank you for her. Thank you for her. Thank you for this experience. Thank you for my pain. Ooh, you want to really go somewhere? Thank the pain. It's painful, but thank that pain. And the amazing thing is after I did that, and you feel like you're dying, but you're not dying. The part that's killing you is dying. You after that end up living. You end up growing. You end up loving. Another a bit of life comes in after that. And the amazing thing is she, right after that, and everything I really feel is very spiritual, because right after that, after I went through that internal shift, she literally came downstairs and she fixed the thing by herself of what was actually bothering me. So that's an example. So there's many things. There's sometimes if I'm afraid of rejection, or if I'm afraid of failure, I remember being on the subway and I was just like, yeah, awesome. I failed. I feel like a failure. Awesome. I feel like a failure. I feel it. Awesome. That's so, wow, this is what it's like to feel like a failure. Like, awesome.
And I think that's such an interesting approach to switch it, because most of us are taught, think positive. And if you want to succeed, then you have to see yourself as a success. You have to see yourself up on the stage and do and be the bestseller and everything else. But when you give yourself that permission to just be a failure, to really totally screw it all up, to just whatever the case it might be, lose your temper, whatever, you're suddenly not trying to become a thing. You're just allowing yourself to be as you are in that moment.
Yeah, totally. You're being present. And yeah, again, the extent that you could feel that and go through it, really what happens is that's just a mind game. It's like a program in and of itself, the thinking positive thing. Because then what happens is you resist the emotions that you really need to feel. And then what you resist ends up persisting. And then you lock it up, and then there's built-in emotion. And now we come to what happens when you have all this emotion in you that has not been seen, that has not been accepted, that has not been loved, that has not been allowed into your life, which is most people. Okay. What ends up happening, it ends up manifesting itself most of the time in a physical ailment. Okay, so I deal with a lot of people who they have a lot of back pain. Immediately it goes into, yeah, of course you have that. You know, it's like immediately it goes to like, I literally intuitively am tapped into something's going on. You're holding on to something that actually doesn't belong to you. You know, like something is going on, and energetically we get to talk about it. And as you're talking about it, as you're talking about what is actually going on, I'm moving energy. So the energy is end up shifting something that's been trapped for a very long time and able to move it out of your body. So you could really shift. All emotions need to be seen. All emotions need to be felt. You know, you're a child and you're cowering in the corner and you have to shut down because you're in survival mode. These big people, they are in charge of your life. Your life depends on you acclimating to the situation at hand. But what you don't realize is that when you become an adult, everything is shifted except for your pattern and your mentality until you're able to kind of get into so much pain that you can't handle it anymore. You're like, I'm going to seek some help, and I want to grow to the next level, and I want to become more of who I want to be, and I want to get more in touch with my soul's purpose and journey, and I want to do stuff that's fun. I want to enjoy my life. Yeah, well, you want to enjoy your life? Let's also enjoy the healing process, because as painful as it is, it's also beautiful. And it's also, I just want to say, it's like, obviously it's so healing, but I if it's okay, I want to talk about energy and vibration for a minute.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So because when there's ever pain emotionally or physically in your body, it's a low vibration. And people, what are you talking about? And I didn't even know what I was talking about. That's why this stuff was like all foreign to me. People could even say the word synchronicity. I had no clue what that meant. It means like coincidence. Anyway, so so I didn't know any of this stuff. But what I did know is that I had a friend actually who had a meningitis, and she unfortunately she had some brain damage and all this stuff. But she ended up taking her to an energy healer, and she was able to get basically saved her life. And her head was like a watermelon, and the energy healer, like, she watched the kid's head go down, like they were going to have a drain in her head for the rest of her life. And that didn't have to happen. It's mind-blowing what energy was doing. And I was just like, oh my gosh. I was like, does he do that for, for emotional stuff too? So that's how I first got introduced to the energetic community, I guess, was through miracles. And so what ended up happening is I got myself, a lot of energy sessions, and it kind of brought me back to life. There's this religious concept of, it's called Techiyat HaMesim, which means revival of the dead, and which is going to happen in the Messianic era, that's what's prophesied, etc. And I was just like, that's what I experienced with the energy work, because I was so entangled and enmeshed in such unhealthy relationships that I literally was not even alive anymore. I wasn't myself at all. I was so disconnected. I had my patterns had gotten so low bottom that I didn't even want to be here again. and so, but the energy work, because it connects to the energy in you, your soul is energy. Everything about you is energy. And so that actually revives me. And that really set my path off onto a whole nother realm of healing, was the energetic component. And I think it's a really important one. And it's something that is just so helpful, because if you can be raised vibrationally, like once you feel better, guess what ends up happening? You think better. Absolutely. Everything changes. Okay. So then, so whatever. So I took my courses and I got certified. It was very exciting, and I do work. And so what's been actually happening more and more is the melding of the coaching and the energy work. And this is something that I find to be so profound and mind-blowing myself after I get off the phone with somebody. 9 out of 10 people that I work with are remote sessions. And the shifts that end up happening while you're talking about something that is going on, you're also you're describing some pain. There's some discomfort in this relationship, and that itself is at a lower vibration. So when I'm moving life force energy up through my head, out, down through my hands, out my arms, through my hands, and I'm creating an energy field that's a high vibration. And I do this through certain breathing techniques and whatever, but there's a high vibration going on. So where my intention goes, the energy flows. And by the way, think about that. It's so mind blowing. And I learned, like, have you ever heard, oh, where your thoughts go, energy flows? That doesn't really mean anything to me, right? But now it really, really means something, because I mean, I've worked on my mother-in-law, my former mother-in-law, and she had a knee that needs to be replaced. And after I've been working on her knee doesn't need to be replaced anymore. Like, she's not even in any pain. So the intention of where that energy was going, and she's in Florida, that energy was actually going into her knee, and the body was using it as energy food to raise its own vibration, thereby healing itself.
Yeah.
And by the way, that works hands in hand also with the coaching, because a coach is not there to fix, like, nobody's fixing anybody. I'm a healer because I've healed. I do healing work on myself. I'm my own healer, right? And then I create this space so that way you can heal. And so with the coaching, it's like, it's the reflection and the bringing you out and shifting and everything. And then with the energy work, you energetically get to move stagnant energy that's been sitting in your energy field, probably generationally sitting in your energy field, and then you just got it, right? But once you're open to it, so I just gave an example of physical work when somebody is physically in pain. So that actually was very helpful. But again, what I was saying is a lot of times what I'll start doing is I'll just start sending someone energy, of course, with their permission, but when they're starting to talk and they're in a lot of pain, it's like, okay, well, I send energy, and I'm guided to, like, exactly where to put it, just intuitively. And new energy is coming in, and that other stuff is going out. So then you start experiencing shifts. And so my client, they're like literally experiencing huge shifts, and it goes, and then it does. It's like, oh, that's a pattern. What's going on? Tell me, what does that remind you of? Something is going on in your life. That's a pattern. Somebody who doesn't speak up at meetings because they're afraid to be heard. Oh, somebody, she just had a cough. She's like, I have a cough that's not going away. Can we work on this? Sure. We start, I start sending her energy. We start working on that, and I was like, oh, of course. I said, because you're afraid to speak. You're afraid to say what's true for you. And she's like, yeah, 100%. Okay. And by the way, I have permission to tell the story, all the stories. So what ends up happening is that we have this like amazing experience where this energy is just being moved, and she could feel it. She feels exactly where it's stuck. And right when I started doing it, she's like, she felt it right away. And it was so interesting. Before, it was like this big boulder. And as the energy is going and as we're working on it, it's starting to get smaller. And I have this vision of her like by a lake, and she's picking it up, a ball, like a little ball, and then she throws it into the water. And I was like, oh, that's so cool that I saw that. And I was like, I wonder what her experience is. And she told me halfway through the session, which was about like when I had that experience, she had this feeling of a boulder also, and all of a sudden it just dispersed like through her. And it was just like the most kind of mind-blowing thing, because here I am throwing it into water in my mind. And it's, when you throw a rock into water, you see the ripple effects of it, right? And that's literally what she received on the other end. And she's telling me, her voice is feeling better because things needed to be blocked. And when she was younger, we went back into it, when you're younger and what happened. And it's a lot of inner child work. And it's very healing to come as an adult to your inner child and to tell it all the good things and all the blessings and how you really are free. Like, even if you don't even feel free, some people you realize, wait a second, I really am free. I really do. I'm the one who's in control of my decisions ultimately. Like, you're not in that same place. So there's just really a lot of healing that goes on, and a lot of trauma gets released. And I know I got really into that, but I was anyway. So that's what ends up happening, because when you higher the vibration and there's more energy flowing through you, it allows more of a flow, and it's very healing. It's really healing. I'm just kind of blown away.
That's awesome. Yeah. Again, I love your enthusiasm and your passion for it. It's because it's not something that has to be all Zen. It's not something that just has to be.
No, man, I go into the gutter with you.
And I think that's important, because we've been staying on the surface levels for so long, and now, like you said, we're in a time now where we're releasing these big traumas. We're releasing the generational curses, all of the patterns. We are witnessing it as a society where people are going, this is not going to happen anymore. I am done. And it's so beautiful to watch this kind of uprising that's happening.
Yeah, and what's really beautiful is when you have the uprising and realize that the uprising is really in you, and what you are seeing outside of you is really being created by the collective consciousness. So the more that you as an individual actually are able to access your inner healing and your inner peace and shift yourself, you are a whole world unto yourself. You create world, you create matter with your thoughts. We create. And this is what we've created up until now. Shadows, they're all coming out. They're all coming out. But when you really have power is when you are able to go in and, I don't want to even say fight the fight, but really like deal with the internal stuff that's being brought up. So that way spiritually things shift, world shifts, like everything shifts when you shift on the inside and you start creating some peace in your life. That's going to be more worth it than a million people that are going out and doing all sorts of things to try to externally create something. I'm not saying those things are wrong. I'm not judging anything. But what I'm saying is, where is the power, and where are we really getting to led to is freedom from within. This is what we're being called to, is freedom to experience and to your own power in your own soul. You have that God-given right to experience peace, to experience love, to experience abundance, to experience peaceful relationships, to experience doing what you love to do and are passionate for it, and have a beautiful exchange with it. I was going to say like monetarily, you know, and what I want to actually talk about this. I didn't know if it was going to come through, but this is what is the abundance in your life. Okay. So once you start working on and start clearing out what is inside of you that is not serving you, all of what you are wanting, all of what your soul is wanting to come to you, because it's already whatever you want wants you. And so by you clearing this out and healing what's inside of you, you then are inviting all the goodness, all the abundance, all of the love, all of the caring, all of your power right into your life, right into your experience. And I think a good analogy of this is a garden hose. One of my former coaches gave me that. It was such a brilliant analogy, is that there's a garden hose, and just picture that there was a garden hose being stuck with a whole bunch of dirt inside of it. And then you turn the water on. You're going to have like little trickles of water come out. Not going to be functioning properly, right? So once you start getting the dirt out and start removing that which is not serving you anymore, loving it, like you're not angry at the dirt when you're taking it out. Just picture yourself. I'm adding on to this analogy, so now it's becoming more of mine. So you're not angry at the dirt when you're taking it out. You're not like, oh, you stupid dirt, I'm going to take you out. No, not angry at it. It's just like, oh, look what's there. That's some dirt, which actually hopefully also speaks to Annette's question, because it's like, it's more about being observational and getting curious. It's like, oh, look what just showed up. So interesting. Anger showed up, pain showed up, jealousy showed up, embarrassment showed up, whatever it was, controlling, manipulation, ooh, all that good stuff, right? That just showed up. I don't feel good about that, right? Oh, that's so interesting how that showed up. Oh, some dirt. Let's just take that dirt out. Let's just kind of comb through that. Let's just move that. Let's move that stuff out of the way. So that way, when you turn on your water hose, you have this beautiful flowing stream of water, which is analogous to the beautiful stream of flow of your life, of your soul's experience, of so much abundance coming to you. Anytime I've made investments, and I've done it since, I wasn't even able to work it when I was going through that trauma. And you know what I just said? I was like, I don't care. I just want to make sure my rent, I want to make sure my food, and then I had to make sure that my mental health was covered. And since then, I have invested tens of thousands. It might even be more, tens and tens of thousands of dollars. And even I was afraid to tell people, because it's like I was, a single mom, and I really couldn't be, like I was getting a lot of help, and like I was asking for a lot of help, and it's like I was embarrassed to say that I was actually investing into my own mental health. But when I did that and I put that first, I made my mental health the priority. And what has happened is that that's the best investment that you can ever make, is into yourself and your own mental health. It doesn't even matter on the practitioner. Of course, you want somebody that's going to be qualified and good. But I've made investments into people where it's helped me, but I've had some really serious learning experiences from it also. But the point is that I stood up for myself. I invested in myself. And now I'm at the point where I am literally blown away by what is happening in my life, the level of abundance that's flowing in, people contacting me, people experiencing a ridiculous amount of healing in their life. You know how good that feels? It literally makes every single thing that I have ever gone through in my life purposeful. How good does that feel? So good. Every single thing, anything that you're in pain about now, God will use that. And if you don't like the word God, the universe will use that. Source will use it. Your higher power will use it. Your soul will use it. The electricity that turns on your light, whatever, okay? It will be used, because there is no waste. There is no waste in this universe. Everything gets used. Everybody is on a journey. Everybody is on a path. You know, this is how it is. You know, we're here to help each other. I grow to the level that I invest in myself, to the level that I'm willing to go through the pain of my life, to willing to see what I need to see, willing to see what I don't see, willing to feel the uncomfortable feelings, willing to just go that deep and switch and change, and to make these. That's to the level that I can take my clients, and that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful, beautiful experience to watch.
Absolutely, because it's always expanding.
Yes.
You know,
and
always expanding.
Totally. And what's even, when you're saying it's expanding, you don't even know what the effects are, the ripple effects of that. You know, I mean, I have my clients, it's not even just me and them now. You know, I work with a life coach, you know, with people that are also helping people. When you're working with a parent, you're literally changing the generation, the life of the child, of that whole entire generational stream, so we can all start getting back into alignment with ourselves. Because when we are in alignment with ourselves, there is no war, there is no disagreements, there is nothing, because then you're in your power. We are all connected. We are one human divine race. We are all connected to each other. And so once you give yourself the permission to do your own healing work, you become this force of life to give permission. Either I've literally given people permission, like, no, you could do that, you know, but you give people on an energetic, on a spiritual level, you're opening it up for other people. You don't even know what you're doing on a conscious level, to become more of who they are, and to give them permission. The more you give yourself permission to step into your own power, to do what you love to do, to heal which is harming you, to love that which you hate, then you're in flow. And when you're in flow, there is nothing that can stop you. I promise. So good.
I absolutely love this. Now, I've incorporated asking one final question before we get off of the live.
Yeah.
So, do you have any words of wisdom that you would like to share with the world right now? What does the world need to hear most right now?
Sorry, what did you say? Okay, so for my, my final words of wisdom. So I guess, yeah. So what I would like to share is that I think everything so far that I've said was really wise. And so listen to this back. So what I want to say is that intuitive nudge, that thing from within, the thing that is you're resisting, or that you're uncomfortable with, but you know is going to bring you to the next level, step into that. Listen to the voice. First of all, you know, everybody's at their own levels. Some people are really in such a level that they're like, they don't even want to be here anymore. It's too much. You know, there's too much stuff going on. What I'm going to say is, who would you be? Where would you be without those thoughts? You know, who can you connect to? What can you do? Be willing. Okay. Be willing. Like, if you're just willing for one more day, for one more second, to just be willing to shift. There's no way that you're going to go from being like, well, I mean, anything is possible, but I'm just saying, I didn't go from being a rageaholic in one day to being like somebody that actually has serenity in their lives and can actually see, wow, thank God that I'm actually in control of that, because I would have done a lot of damage. Okay. That doesn't happen in like a split second. Can it? Yeah, but usually it doesn't, because our nervous systems have to acclimate to the love that we are. And you have to acclimate to that. And so I guess what I want to say is the willingness to just be willing to go through a change, to be willing to experience, just like the caterpillar when it goes into its, what is it called? I don't know.
Boom.
Thank you. To its cocoon, and it's getting squashed. That's how it's being prepared to be a butterfly, is it goes through so much pain that it thinks it's going to die. And what's really happening is it's doing it on purpose, because the blood needs to flow through. It needs to build up those wings. It needs to build up those muscles. So that way it can actually then shed its cocoon and become the butterfly. So what I'm just going to offer you is to have the willingness to grow into who you truly are, and to take your next, take the next right step that would serve you and your soul and your freedom into walking into your power, and to experience a life that you really do deserve to experience in love and joy. Yeah.
Awesome. 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 Thank you so much, Vered, for joining us tonight, for your final words of wisdom and all of the wisdom that you had to share tonight. I really enjoy listening to your passion. I love listening to your wisdom and your stories with your clients. It's so brilliant to watch you. And I've been witness to your growth over the past 2 years, because we are actually coming up on our 2-year anniversary.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It really is. So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you everyone who has joined us tonight on the conversation. I will be on here next Tuesday, and not sure what I'm chatting about, but it's just me next Tuesday. The following week, we've got Maximilian Webster. He's rescheduled to talk to us. And then we have a shamanic healer coming on named Jocelyn Doyle. And then we have Susan St. John coming on talking about reconnecting with God, and that one's taking place on August 25th. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Vered, and have a great night, everybody.
Have a good night. But I just want to say, if that anybody wants to get in touch with me, I'm Vered Segal, and I'm on Facebook. And I'm not kidding. My phone number is 718-314-3784, 718-314-3784. Go ahead, shoot me a text, connect with me on Facebook. I would love to hear from you if you've got anything out of this. And I love this. It's like, it almost sounds like an arrogant thing, like, oh, everything I said was wise. You know why? Because it's not for me. It's from the healing. And that's what happens. You end up moving into your own wisdom and your own healing. And thank you, Catherine. It's been such an honor and a privilege. And thank you for all who have tuned in and listened to this far. And I just love you and would love to connect. So that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Vered. Have a great night, everybody.